Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today's lesson is classwork. Is going to be comparing and scaling, lesson 3.1. And our goal today is that I can use a unit rate to find scale factor. Now, one of the things I forgot to do is have you guys put in any vocabulary for this unit. So the first thing you're going to do today is you're going to take out the vocabulary sheet and paste it into the first available page of your math notebook. If you don't have a math notebook, make sure that this is 3-hole punched and put into your binder, which you are required to have. And we're going to find the we're going to enter the vocabulary for the first 4 words here. We're making up for lost time, so bear with me. The first word we need to put in there is ratio. And underneath ratio, I'm going to put an example of a ratio, like 2 to 3, or 4 to 6. Both of these are how we would express a ratio. Now, what is a ratio? Well, the definition is a comparison of 2 quantities. If we have 2 quantities and we're comparing them, it's an example of ratios. So, for instance, if I have 2 cups flour to 1 cup water, that would be a perfect example of a ratio expressed as 2 to 1. Pause this at any time or rewind it if you need these notes. The next one we're going to do is scaling. Now, scaling, okay, is when we take something like that 2 to 3 ratio and we turn it into 4 to 6. Basically, we double everything by 2. And the textbook definition is the number used to multiply both parts of a ratio to produce an equal ratio. A ratio that is equal, it's the same ratio, it's just double the size or triple the size. Okay? And a couple examples we could put in there is one is a triple batch of cookies. We need to triple a recipe. And an example I could give is if I have, again, let's use that 2 to 1 ratio, and if I multiply everything here by 4, I end up getting it to be 8 fourths. 8 to 4. An 8 to 4 ratio. So that's an example of scaling. Scaling is basically just doubling or tripling or multiplying all the numbers by some other number. We've been doing plenty of that already. And then we're going to talk about rate. And rate is when we take the comparison of 2 quantities measured in 2 different units. Okay? That sounds a little complicated, but for instance, if I have $3 a soda, I'm comparing a rate, or let's say $4 a dozen for donuts. And a rate is basically when we have 2 different things set up. So if I say $2.99 a gallon for gasoline, we have money, right, being compared to gallons. And these are two very, very different things, right? They are two very different things, but it's basically how much does, three of these things cost or four of these things cost. It's when we take two very different things like money and gasoline, or miles and gallons, or tickets per, eggs per dozen. It's taking two very different titles and treating them like a fraction or treating them like a ratio. Again, pause this if you need to at any time. And a rate table is when we take those equivalent rates and organize them. So for instance, if I have soda and I have money, and let's say that soda is 50 cents. Oh, sorry, back that up. One soda costs me $2. It's a very expensive soda. Two sodas cost me $4. Three sodas would cost me $6. And so on. And finally, for our notes, we're going to put in unit rate. And a unit rate is any time where the second number is 1. So the best example I have is 65 miles per hour. And that means we go 65 miles for every 1 hour. It's essentially a ratio. Anytime you talk about speed, you're using a ratio. Anytime we use per, P-E-R, we're using a unit rate. I'm going to just put that in here as my reminder. Per basically means for every 1. Okay, pause this if you need to and get all these notes down. Let's go ahead and start our classwork. Lesson 3.1 classwork. Make sure you get your name, hour, and crew in here. Okay. And reading this, stores, catalogs, and websites often use rates in their ads. The ads sometimes give the cost for several different items. You might see an offer like the one shown at the right. The listed prices for orders are 10, 15, 20 calculators. But it's possible to figure out the price for any number you want to purchase. One way to figure out these prices is to build a rate table. Hey, we figured that out. And we have a rate table below for our calculators. Now, this company is selling us different types of calculators. Look around my room. I'm missing a lot of calculators. I want to buy some new ones. This is actually really important to me. It actually could help me out a whole lot, like right now. Okay? Now, fraction calculators are being sold for 20 of them for $120. If I want to buy scientific calculators, and those are fancy ones that have lots of extra buttons like sine and cosine and tangent, and let me do x squared and x times y and all kinds of other fun buttons that I kind of know how to use. And then finally, I've got graphing calculators, which are the really, really fancy ones that are like little computers. I could probably land something on the moon with them. And the scientific calculators are being sold for $240 for 15. And the graphing calculators, they're selling me 10 of them for $800. That's crazy. Well, let's go ahead and fill out this table. Now, one way we could fill out this table really easily would be to find the cost of just one calculator. Really quick, how do you think I'm going to find the cost of one fraction calculator? I know that 20 of them cost $120. Well, in my calculator, I'm going to put in 120 divided by 20. Do that now. 120 divided by 20, or if you know some mental math, you figure out that those fraction calculators cost about $6 each. $6 each. I could go to McDonald's and get myself a quarter pounder meal for that. Really? Ugh. Okay. The next one is the scientific calculators, and those go for $240. But to find the cost of one, I'm going to have to divide by what? That's right, 15. So I do $240 divided by 15. And I get what? That's right, $16. So it cost me $16 for a scientific calculator. Oh man, me and the wife could go and get something at Noodles and Company for $16. Ugh, okay. It is ridiculous how much these things cost. Now finally, we've got this graphing calculator. And they're charging me $800 for how many of them? $800 divided by how many? That's right, 10 calculators. So I do 800 divided by 10, or I use my mental math, and each of those cost $80 each. That is ridiculous. $80 each. Really? That's a cell phone bill. Okay. I'm just stunned by this. And now I want to find the cost for 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, and 20. I bet you already know what we're going to have to do. Well, let's get started with the fraction one. With the fraction one, we do 2 times 6 gives me 12, 3 times 6 gives me 18, and so on. And for the scientific calculator, I do 2 times 16, which gives me 32, and 3 times 16, which gives me 48, and so on. And if I do 2 times 80, I get 160. And 3 times 80 gives me 240, and so on. Go ahead and pause this video and fill out the rest of this table before we begin. Go ahead. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here is the completed table. As you can see, the prices are very, very, very different for each of these calculators. Now, if I'm talking on people on the phone, I really need to be able to place these quick orders for all the different sizes. I need to know what will be the best deal really quickly. Now, for question B, how much does it cost to buy 53 fraction calculators? How much does it cost to buy 27 scientific calculators? And how much to buy 9 graphing calculators? Well, let's start with the first one. If I have my fraction calculators, I have 53 of them times my unit cost. How much does each one cost? $6. And then if I have my scientific calculator, each one costs $16. Does it really matter what order I multiply these in? No. But I am buying 27 of them. So I'm going to have to do 16 times 27. And then, to buy 9 graphing calculators, I do 9 times how much for each one? That's right, 80. Okay. Go ahead and raise your hand when you have the prices for all of these different calculators. Okay. Let's check our work. 53 times 6 gives me $318. Crazy! Then I do 16 times $27. Gives me $432. And if I do 9 times 80, I end up with $720. So even though I get only 9 calculators, it is by far, it's like twice as much, more than twice as much, as getting 53 fraction calculators. That's a real big investment, I'm sure. Okay, let's go on to our next question. How many fraction calculators can we buy if we can only spend $390? Well, let's start with the money first. We have $390, and we have to divide by the cost of a fraction calculator. What's the cost of a fraction calculator again? That's right, $6. So I do $390 divided by $6 a calculator, and I get exactly 65 calculators. Let's make sure we label that. Fraction calculator. All right. What if we can only spend 84? Well, if I go back to this, I know that it's probably going to be between 15 calculators and 10 calculators. I'm guessing somewhere around 13 or 14. Okay? And I can tell by looking at my table really quickly right here. Right? So, we take that $84 and we divide by $6 a calculator. So $84 divided by $6 is exactly 14 calculators. Okay. Question D works exactly the same way. How many graphing calculators can we buy if we are spending $2,500? $2,500. Take a second right now and see if you can solve this one on your own. Okay, I take that $2,500 and I divide it by the $80. So 2,500 divided by 80 gives me, can that be right? 2,500 divided by 80? Yep. I get 31.25, which means, can I buy a quarter of a calculator? No. I can only buy 31 calculators, and I'm going to have some money left over. So I can have $31, sorry, not $31, 31 calculators spending that much money. What if I can only spend 560? Let's take a look at our chart here. Graphing calculators. Well, I know it's going to be more than 5, but less than 10. So, let's see exactly what it is. Take a second and do this one entirely on your own. Okay, let's check our work. $560 divided by 80. 560 divided by 80 gives me exactly 7 calculators. Okay, very expensive calculators, those guys. Now, what arithmetic operation, addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division, did we use to find the cost per calculator? And this actually goes back to when we first made our table. How did I find the cost of the individual calculators? I took the number, the amount it cost for 5 or 10 or 20, and I divided by the number I had. So let's go ahead and put that in there. We did cost divided by the number of calculators. And that gave us our unit cost. And this is actually a really, really important little formula here. It's how we find the cost per item. So if you go to the store and you buy a 6-pack of something, or you buy 10 for how many dollars, you can find the cost of each item. And in fact, you can sometimes find a really, really good deal on stuff by dividing and finding the cost of each individual item. Okay. Now for F is a little trickier. Write an equation for each type of calculator. Now an equation is just a way of finding the cost of any number of calculators. Well, how much did it cost to buy those calculators? Well, it cost me $6 per calculator times, well, the number of calculators. So let's use N. And in fact, let's make a little note. N equals the number of calculators. We're going to make that little note for ourselves so that who's ever looking at this knows that we just take the number of calculators times 6 to find our fraction calculators. What do you think the scientific one's going to be? We take that cost. How much does each one cost again? 16 times the number of calculators. And I bet you can figure out the graphing one already. The cost is going to equal 80 times the number of calculators. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to take just a quick look at our homework before we get started. Now, our homework works like this. We are going to use rates, especially unit rates, in different situations. So, Marla can drive her car 580 miles at a steady speed using 20 gallons of gasoline. Make a rate table showing the number of miles her car can be driven at this speed. Show 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 10 gallons of gas. So we're going to start with 580 miles divided by 20. And that number will give you her miles per gallon for 1 gallon of gas. Okay, I'm actually going to label this gallons. Okay, Joel can drive his car at a steady speed. He can go 450 miles on 15 gallons of gas. This is the exact same problem. Just pay attention to it. Okay, for 3, Frankie's Trail Mix Factory gives customers the following information. Okay, they say if you eat 50 grams of trail mix, you're going to get 150 calories. What I would do is find how many calories you get per gram. For 1 gram, so find calories per 1 gram. Once you do that, all you have to do is multiply or divide, and you get all of these answers. Just think about it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, go ahead, give a good shot at your homework. Please take the opportunity to do some above and beyond. Remember, it is insurance. The more you get of the above and beyond right, the higher your grade will be. And if you get some regular questions wrong, your grade will still be higher. Have fun.